Hare Krishna, welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 8, chapter entitled The Story of Pingala. Before we start the class, let's do a simple Mangala Charana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaim Narotamam Deving Saraswating Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the only means of conquest, let us offer our respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, onto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, onto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and onto Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam. Nashta Preshabdareshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavadi Naistakhi. By regularly attending Srimad Bhagavatam class and by rendering service onto the lotus feet of pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely vanquished, and loving devotional service onto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised by transcendental songs and choice poetry, is established in one's heart as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jnana Salakaya Chaksuran Mritanyana Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master illuminated my heart with a torch of transcendental knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Nama Om Vishnumadaya Krishna Parishtai Bhutale Srimite Japataka Swamiti Namne Nama Charpidaya Nitai Kripabidayane Gora Kadadamdai Niragramtane Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vranda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome everyone. Today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today's class is a continuation from last week's class, which is the beginning of Uddhava Gita. In Uddhava Gita is a conversation between Lord Krishna and Uddhava. So in that conversation, Uddhava asked Krishna one very important question. He asked that in Kali Yuga, many of the inhabitants of living entities, especially human beings, they will be very unfortunate, very unintelligent, and very disturbed. So how can they advance in spiritual life? So in reply, Krishna told Uddhava that actually the living entity, the jiva, the soul itself is their own guru. Simply by observing the material nature and also the nature of the living entity, one can learn principles that give them freedom and liberation from repeated birth and death. So in this connection, Krishna told a story about a conversation that happened between a Avadut Brahmana and Maharaj Yadu. So last week, this conversation started with this Avadut Brahmana telling Maharaj Yadu that this Brahmana, he had 24 gurus. He learned principles from 24 gurus. So last week we heard how this Avadut Brahmana learned from Mother Earth how to be sober. He learned from mountains and trees how to serve others and to dedicate for the benefit of others. He learned from the wind how to be satisfied simply to keep oneself alive and to remain uncontaminated by our bodies and by our senses. Then he also told about how he learned from the sky, how the soul is cannot be divided and it cannot be perceived by the blunt material senses. Then he learned from water how to be naturally clean and purified. He learned from fire how to devour things without becoming dirtied, destroy inauspicious desire, and give souls illumination, birth. And the soul is not affected by birth and death actually. Then he told about how he learned from the moon, how this material world is a place where one appears and disappears. One takes birth and there is death. It's constantly changing. Then he told about how the sun. He learned how the sun how to live his life in such a way that he avoids entanglement with sense objects, and he knows how to see the real self instead of the false ego. And of course, the last part he told about the story of the pigeon, how the pigeon, because being too much affectionate, too much attachment to his family, he suffered unnecessarily. So today's chapter is the continuation of that conversation, and this chapter starts with text number 1. It's a lesson from the Python. Text number 1. The saintly Brahmana said, "O king, the embodied living entity automatically experiences unhappiness in heaven or hell. Similarly, happiness will also be experienced even without one seeking it. Therefore, a person of intelligent discrimination does not make any endeavor to obtain such material happiness." Text number 2. Following the example of the python, one should give up material endeavor and accept for one's maintenance food that come of his own accord, whether such food is delicious or tasteless, ample or meager. Text number 3. If at any time food does not come, then a saintly person should fast for many days without making endeavor. He should understand that by God's arrangement he must fast. Thus, following the example of the python, he should remain peaceful and patient. So this is the lesson learned from the python. A saintly person should remain peaceful at all times and not be too much materially active. He should be maintaining his body without much endeavor. That is the way of the saintly person. Even though possess of full sensual, mental and physical strength, a saintly person should not become active for material gain, but rather should always remain alert to his actual self-interest. So today we see this is actually the opposite happening here. The very phrase material life means that one is fully engaged in acquiring material assets, unnecessarily acquiring material assets with the idea, actually not actually happening, but simply with the idea that we can enjoy. But in reality, what's happening is the person who works so hard to accumulate the material asset, he hardly enjoys any of his hard work. Who enjoys? The government enjoys. They collect tax from you. Without you wanting to give tax, they collect tax from you. And then after that, there's whatever's left, you live like everyone else. What enjoyment is there? We eat enough food, we have shelter, we have clothes on our body, and we have maybe a little bit of entertainment if we have time. And then when old age comes, all our wealth will go to who? Will go to doctors and lawyers. So those saintly personalities, they understand this. They understand this point. This life, anything material that you have and you gain here, you don't keep with you. You hardly can enjoy. So what they do is they don't squander the opportunity of this human life by accumulating unnecessary material assets. They work simply to maintain life and soul together for the purpose of advancing in spiritual life. Spiritual life here means getting gain that will give you eternal benefit. So that is the understanding of a saintly person. So this is the lesson learned from the python. Python, interestingly enough, I remember there was one conversation by Srila Prabhupada. He was telling his disciples that we Vaishnavas, these saintly persons, we follow the way of the python. The python doesn't work hard to find food. All the python does is he just opens his mouth. Whatever comes in his mouth, that is his food. So we Vaishnavas also, we follow the same method. We let those who are too materially absorbed work very hard to acquire money. And what we'll do is we'll go to them, preach to them, and tell them, please donate to our for this cause of Krishna consciousness. And being very, very pious, they will donate. They will give lots of money. So this is the way of the python. It is not a cheating way. It is actually the intelligent way of living a life. So let's move on. This is text number 5. A saintly sage is happy and pleasing in his external behavior, whereas internally he is most grave and thoughtful. Because his knowledge is immeasurable and unlimited, he is never disturbed, and thus in all respects he is like the tranquil water of the unfathomable and unsurpassable ocean. During the rainy season, the swollen river rush into the ocean, and during the dry summer rivers, now swollen, severely reduces their supply of water. Yet the ocean does not swell up during the rainy season, nor does it dry up in the hot summer. In the same way, a saintly devotee who has accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his goal of his life sometimes will receive by providence great material opulence, and sometimes he will find himself materially destitute, materially poor. However, such a devotee of the Lord does not rejoice in a flourishing condition, nor is he morose when poverty is stricken. So this is the way of a saintly person. He behaves like an ocean. So it explains here that sometimes when it's heavy rain, the rivers will overflood, it will overflow. And when the rivers flow into the ocean remains the same. Whether the river is flooded or the river is dry, the ocean always remains the same. So in Bhagavad Gita, there's a very nice verse spoken by Krishna, if I'm not mistaken, in chapter 2. It says there, Matras patas tu kaunteya situna sukadugoda agama ponyo nitas tam titik sazava bharada. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the appearance of happiness and distress are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer season. They only appear because of sense perception only, and one should learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So this is the verse that explains the lessons learned from the ocean. One must tolerate them without being disturbed. In this world, you will see that when we achieve some kind of material gain that makes us happy, right at the corner of that happiness will be some distress. And as soon as you experience some distress or some difficulty, right at the corner there will be some happiness. So this is the way of this material world. Always we are oscillating between happiness and distress. Happiness and distress. If you will see a chart, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. So the saintly sage, they realize this is the way of the world. There's no benefit to be gained from being too much affected by happiness and distress. So if you want to know what is the secret to being peaceful, this is the secret here. Learn the lesson from the ocean. So this is text number 7. This is a lesson learned from the moth. One who has failed to control his senses immediately feels attraction upon seeing a woman's form, which is created by illusionary energy of the Supreme Lord. Indeed, when the woman speaks with enticing words, smiles coquettishly, and moves her body sensuously, his mind is immediately captured, and thus he falls blindly into the darkness of material existence, just as the maddened moth maddened by the fire rushes blindly into the flames. Text number 8. A foolish person with no intelligence, discrimination is immediately aroused at the sight of a lusty woman beautifully decorated with golden ornaments, fine clothing, and other cosmetic feature. Being eager for sense gratification, such a fool loses all intelligence and is destroyed, just like the moth who rushes into the blazing flame. So this is the lesson learned from the moth. I don't know if you have seen this. Sometimes at night, when there is a campfire or there's any bright light, these insects, they are called a moth, they are attracted to bright light. Sometimes they are so much attracted to bright light that they go towards the light, and sometimes the light will just burn them into ashes. So this is the lesson to be learned from the moth. So it's a warning for all of us not to be too much attached to the beauty of beautiful women. This is not only a warning to men, it is actually a warning to women also. Because women who are not very mature minded, they will be too much absorbed in the bodily beauty. They become jealous of seeing other women more good looking than themselves. And most young girls, especially teenage girls, unfortunately they suffer from an inferiority complex. A little criticism, they feel very much disturbed. So this is a sign of somebody who is not very spiritually mature. Of course, men is the main victim here. men who are too absorbed in sensual enjoyment, they will be very much distracted by seeing women. So simply by being attracted to women, their life are spoiled. Why? Because their consciousness will be so much absorbed in simply enjoying material senses. Women's nature is that they expand material enjoyment. That is nothing wrong about women. We should not hate women for this reason. Some men out there, they make it a big point to make a big case against women. No? Actually, no, it's not their fault. It is just the nature of a woman's body. The fault here is the men. The men are the one who do not know how to control their senses. So don't try to distract the reality of the matter by putting the blame on women. Many cultures around the world, they require women to cover themselves, because of men's weaknesses. Actually, that is not the right thing to do. Even in Vedic culture also, we ask our women to dress very nicely, very modestly, but we do it as a request upon them. It's not that we impose the will of man on a woman. Please understand this. This is the proper way to think about it. Vedic culture does not impose itself on anyone. Vedic culture puts more emphasis on realization. So these lessons given by this Avadut Brahmana is for us to meditate upon and to understand ourselves, not to use it to criticize others. Please understand this. Okay, let's move on. Text number 9. A saintly person should accept only enough food to keep his body and soul together. He should go from door to door accepting just a little bit of food from each family. Thus he should practice the occupation of a honeybee. Just as a honeybee takes nectar from all flowers, big and small, an intelligent human being should take the essence of all religious scriptures. Let me see. A saintly person should not think, this food I will keep to eat tonight and this other food I can save for tomorrow. In other words, a saintly person should not store foodstuff acquired by begging. Rather, he should use his own hand as his plate and eat whatever fits on them. His only storage container should be his belly, and whatever conveniently fits into his belly should be his stock of food. Thus, one should not imitate the greedy honeybee who eagerly collects more and more honey. A saintly mendicant should not even collect foodstuffs to eat later in the same day or the next day. If he disregards this injunction and, like the honeybee, collects more and more delicious food stuff, that will be his collection will indeed ruin him. So this is the lesson learned from a honeybee. So in this instance here about the honeybee, there is two kinds of honeybee. There is the one kind of honeybee that actually works very, very hard to accumulate lots and lots of honey from as many flowers as possible. And this is the kind of honeybee that has this honeycomb. This is where we get our honey to drink. When we go and buy honey from the market, this honey comes from this particular kind of honeybee. This honeybee is like a materialistic person. He works very hard to accumulate lots and lots of honey to be accumulated in the honeycomb. See, the problem here is, just like this honeybee, the materialistic person, his hard work he doesn't enjoy. Just like this honey, that honeycomb is stolen by those who are merchants of honey trade. They come and steal this honey from this hard-working honeybee. So the sannyasi is asked to understand this point and behave like a second kind of honeybee. This other kind of honeybee does not collect honey to be kept anywhere. This honeybee will go and take honey from a limited number of flowers in a day. So this in Sanskrit, this honeybee is called madhukari. So those who are renounced order of life, they practice something called madhukari. Madhukari here means going and asking for alms from a limited number of house in a day. Why do the sannyasis do that? They do that because they don't want to fall into the trap of being greedy. Because asking alms is actually a very, very efficient way to acquire wealth. You don't give anything, you don't provide any service, you don't actually sell anything, you simply just go and ask. So one person, let's say, were to give one coin, that is 100% profit for the materialistic person. So this saintly person who's trying to aim for liberation from this material world, he doesn't want to fall into this trap of thinking like a businessman. If he thinks like a businessman, then his life is spoiled. So those who are sannyasis, those who are sadhus, what they do is they practice something called madhukari. Madhukari here means that in a day, from sunrise to sunset, they will only go to maximum 4 houses to ask for alms. In that 4 houses, if they were to get what they require to survive for that day, they will be happy. If in that 4 houses, if they were to go and ask for alms and nobody gives them anything at all, that day they fast. So this is the way of the sadhu. So similarly, this greedy honeybee that collects honeycombs, he is exactly like a materialistic man. And there was once a talk given by one very famous speaker. He made this point about those who are very greedy. He says that some people are so poor, they are so poor that all they have is money. All they have is money. So this statement lets you know that there is more to life than simply accumulating money, simply accumulating material assets. That is not the purpose of life. Sadhus, on the other hand, simply by living a simple life, even though outwardly they might seem that they are impoverished, they eat very little, sometimes they get food they eat, sometimes they don't get food they don't eat. Outwardly they might seem very impoverished, but inwardly they are free. They are actually experiencing bliss. That is the bliss experience when one tries to engage himself in the service of the Supreme Lord, simply by performing loving devotional service onto the Supreme Lord. And that can be done simply by a thought. You cannot think of a sublime thing when you are immersed in a very unsavory situation. That is like a person who is a materialistic person. He is always dealing with people who are greedy just like him. So how is this a nice experience? It's a horrible experience. So if you are free from such low level of existence, then you have space in your heart and in your mind to think of the Supreme Lord. Sri Krishna is so wonderful. So let's move on. This is text 13. A saintly person should never touch a young girl. In fact, he should not even let his foot touch a wooden doll in the shape of a woman. By bodily contact with a woman, he will surely be captured by illusion, just as an elephant is captured by a she-elephant due to his desire to touch her body. A man possessing intelligent discrimination should never under any circumstances try to exploit the beautiful form of a woman for his sense gratification, just as an elephant trying to enjoy a she-elephant is killed by other bull elephants also enjoying her company. One trying to enjoy a lady company at any moment be killed by her other lovers who are stronger than he. So this is a lesson learned from an elephant. Elephants, they are addicted to, the male elephants especially, are addicted to the female form, the female elephants. So these elephants, these male elephants, usually they are very, very difficult to capture. But those hunters that hunt for such elephants, they realize that the weakness of this male elephant is a female elephant. So what these hunters will do is they will dig a big hole in the ground and they will cover the hole with some grass on top that make it look like it is solid ground. And what these hunters will do is they will put this female elephant in front of this hole. So when this elephant comes and he sees this female elephant there, he will try to enjoy this female elephant, and in doing so he will fall into this hole. And this hunter, what he will do is he will kill this male elephant simply for the tusk. His ivory tusk is very, very sought after. So just like that, a man who is trying to advance in spiritual life, if he is too addicted to the female form, what happens is Maya Devi will entice such man to fall into into the trap of a unscrupulous woman who will exploit them for all they can offer. So this is a lesson learned from the elephant. Now let's go on. This is text 15. A greedy person accumulates a large quantity of money with great struggle and pain. But the person who has struggled so much to acquire this wealth is not always allowed to enjoy it himself or give it in charity to others. The greedy man is like the bee who struggles to produce a large quantity of honey, which is then stolen by a man who will enjoy it personally or sell it to others. No matter how carefully one hides his hard-earned wealth or tries to protect it, there are those who are expert in detecting the whereabouts of valuable things and they will steal it. So this is the honey thief. Just as a hunter takes away the honey laboriously produced by the honeybee, similarly, a saintly mendicant such as brahmachari and sannyasis are entitled to enjoy the property painstakingly accumulated by householders dedicated to family enjoyment. So here, this is the lesson from the honey thief. But the extra point here that is made here is that even though such householders, they work very, very hard to accumulate wealth, the real person that enjoys their wealth is not the people that work hard to accumulate the wealth. No, the real people who enjoy the wealth are these sannyasis and brahmacharis. In the modern setting, in this day and age, we can see that many people, they have worked very hard to accumulate wealth and have property, this and that. At the end of their life, what happens? All their wealth will simply go to doctors and lawyers only. So this lesson from this honey thief is that don't be too overly excited about living a life where you work hard for others. That is the lesson here. Instead, become a Hare Krishna devotee and work hard for Krishna. Simply by working hard for Krishna, one gains great happiness, great satisfaction, and at the end of one's life, one gets liberation. He goes back home, back to Godhead. No more birth, death, old age, and disease. Let's move on. This is text 17, a lesson from the deer. A saintly person dwelling in the forest in the renounced order of life should never listen to songs or music promoting material enjoyment. Rather, a saintly person should carefully study the example of a deer who is bewildered by the sweet music of the hunter's horn and is thus captured and killed. Becoming attracted to the worldly singing, dancing and music entertainment of beautiful women, even the great sage Rasyanagara, the son of Mirge, fell totally under the control, just like a pet animal. Just as a fish incited by the desire to enjoy his tongue is fatally trapped on a fisherman's hook, similarly, a foolish person is bewildered by extremely disturbing urges of the tongue and thus is ruined. So this is an example of the deer. The deer is too much attached to mundane sound. The hunter, knowing the weakness of a deer, will blow his horn, and being attracted to the sound of the horn, this deer will be attracted, will come to this hunter, and this hunter, seeing this deer, will kill the deer. Similarly, the fish, being very lusty for food, having a very lusty tongue, becomes the victim of a fisherman who has a bait on a hook. So this fish becomes a victim. So this is all lessons for us. Never to too much engage in mundane subject matters like TV, radio, and all this news. Don't be so much absorbed in it. We engage in such such medium simply to gain information. Like for myself, I only watch news. I want to know what's going on in the country economically, in the country's politics. That's about it. Beyond that, entertainment all is utter waste of time. You really can't get anything that is worth your while. For those who indulge in it, they know what I'm saying is true. Because if you see such entertainment value, you see the same thing they're repeating over and over and over again. Every movie basically has the same plot, just different actor, different time, different director. That's all. So, engaging in such things actually is not good. Furthermore, the example here is given of a fish. The fish being very lusty in his tongue, he wants to taste very nice food. Because of that food, he becomes a victim of the fisherman who catches the fish, whether in the net or with a hook. So this is a lesson for all of us. We should be very careful with what we put in our tongue. We should only eat to maintain body and soul together. We should not eat to enjoy food. Enjoyment comes by itself. We don't have to look for it. Sometime by Krishna's arrangement, we'll get very nice, tasty food. And when you get it, you should just enjoy it. We should not go out of our way to go and hunt down tasty food like a lot of people around the world. They are called foodies. Foodies are those people who are they hunt down tasty food. So don't become like them. Because at the end of the day, this tasty food is the one that will make you into a victim. So let's move on to text 21. Although one may conquer all of the other senses, as long as the tongue is not conquered, it cannot be said that one has controlled his senses. However, if one is able to control the tongue, then one is understood to be in full control of all the senses. So our Vedic scriptures, it says that among all our senses, our eyes, our nose, our hearing, our sense of touch, all of these can be put under control simply by fasting. Simply by fasting. That means eating once a day, not eating two times a day, 3 times a day. No, we eat only when we need to maintain body and soul together. Simply by fasting, we can keep all our senses of sight, sense of smell, sense of hearing, and sense of touch under control. Everything can be put under control. Even our sexual organs. Also, by fasting alone, you can keep it under control. But there is one senses that is very difficult to keep under control. That is the human tongue. Very, very ferocious. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is highly recommended. Highly recommended that one eats only Krishna Prasad. Only by eating Krishna Prasad can the tongue be put under control. That is the lesson learned here from the fish. So the next section here is the story of this prostitute called Pingala. So this verse goes for quite some time and it's a very nice story to hear. So please listen carefully. This is text 22 until, let me see, the last text is text 44. Text 22. O son of king, previously in the city of Vidya, there dwelled a prostitute named Pingala. Now please hear what I have learned from that lady. Once that prostitute, desiring to bring a lover into her house, stood outside in the doorway at night, showing her beautiful form. O best among men. This prostitute was very anxious to get money, and as she stood on the street at night, she studied all the men who were passing by, thinking, "Oh, this one surely has money. I know he can pay the price, and I am sure he will enjoy my company very much." Thus she thought about all the men on the street. As the prostitute Pingala stood in the doorway, many men came and went, walking by her house. Her only means of sustenance was prostitution, and therefore she anxiously thought, maybe this one who is coming now is very rich. Oh, he is not stopping, but I am sure someone else will come. Surely this man will be coming now, will want to pay me for my love, and he will probably give lots of money. Thus, with vain hope, she remained leaning against the doorway, unable to finish her business and go to sleep. Out of anxiety, she would sometimes talk out towards the street, and sometimes she went back into her house, In this way, the midnight hour gradually arrived. As the night wore on, the prostitute, who intensely desired money, gradually became morose, and her face dried up. Thus, being filled with anxiety for money and most disappointed, she began to feel a great detachment from her situation, and happiness arose in her heart. So this is the sign of somebody who's learnt a lesson of the nature of this material world. Text 28. The prostitute felt disgusted with her material situation and thus became indifferent to it. Indeed, detached act like a sword, cutting to pieces the binding network of material hope and desire. Now, please hear from me the song sung by the prostitute in that situation. Text 29. O King, just as a human being who is bereft of spiritual knowledge never desires to give up his false sense of proprietorship over many material things, similarly, a person who has not developed detachment never desires to give up the bondage of material body. The prostitute Pingala said, just see how greatly illusioned I am. Because I cannot control my mind, just like a fool, I desired lusty pleasure from an insignificant man. Text 31. I am such a fool that I have given up the service of that person who, being eternally situated within my heart, is actually most dear to me. That most dear one is the Lord of the universe, who is the bestower of real love and happiness and the source of all prosperity. Although he is in my own heart, I have completely neglected him. Instead, I have ignorantly served insignificant men who can never satisfy my real desire and who have simply brought me unhappiness, fear, anxiety, lamentation, and illusion. Text 32. Oh, how I have uselessly tortured my own soul. I have sold my body to lusty, greedy men who are themselves object of pity. Thus, practicing the most abominable profession of a prostitute, I hoped to get money and sex pleasure. Text 33. This material body is like a house in which I, the soul, am living. The bone forming my spine, ribs, arms and legs are like the beam, cross beam and pillars of the house, and the whole structure, which is full of stool and urine, is covered by skin, hair and nails. The 9 doors leading into the door are constantly excreting foul substance. Besides me, what woman could be so foolish as to devote herself to this material body, thinking that she might find pleasure and love in this contrapation? Text 34. Certainly in the city of Vedihya, I alone am completely foolish. I neglect the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who awards us everything, even our original spiritual form, and instead I desire to enjoy sense gratification with many men. Text 35. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is absolutely the most dear one for all living beings, because he is everyone's well-wisher and Lord. He is the super soul situated in everyone's heart. Therefore, I will now pay the price of complete surrender, and thus, purchasing the Lord, I will enjoy with him just like Lakshmi Devi. Text 36. Men provide sense gratification for women, but all these men, even the demigods in heavens, have a beginning and an end. They are all temporary creations who will be dragged away by time. Therefore, how much actual pleasure or happiness could any of them ever give to their wives? Text 37. Although I am most stubbornly hoped to enjoy this material world, somehow or other detachment has arisen in my heart, and it is making me very happy. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu must be pleased with me. Even without even knowing it, I must have performed some activity satisfying to him. Text 38. A person who has developed detachment can give up the bondage of material society, friendship and love. And a person who undergoes great suffering gradually becomes, out of hopelessness, detached and indifferent to the material world. Thus, due to my great suffering, such detached awoke in my heart. Yet how could I have undergone such merciful suffering if I were actually unfortunate? Therefore, I am in fact fortunate and have received the mercy of the Lord. He must somehow or other be pleased with me. Text 39. With devotion I accept the great benefit that the Lord has bestowed upon me. Having given up my sinful desire for ordinary sense gratification, I now take shelter of Him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 40. I am now completely satisfied and I have full faith in the Lord's mercy. Therefore I will maintain myself with whatever comes of His own accord. I shall enjoy life with only the Lord, because He is the real source of love and happiness. Text 41. The intelligence of the living entity is stolen away by activities of sense gratification, and thus he falls into the dark well of material existence. Within that well he is then seized by deadly serpents of time. Who else but the Supreme Personality of Godhead could save the poor living entity from such a hopeless condition? Text 42. When the living entity sees that the entire universe has been seized by the serpent of time, he becomes sober and sane, and at that time detach himself from all material sense gratification. In that condition, the living entity is qualified to be his own protector. Text 43. The Avadut said, thus, her mind completely made up, Pingala cut off all her sinful desires to enjoy sex pleasure with lovers, and she became situated in perfect peace. Then she sat down on her bed. Material desires is undoubtedly the cause of great unhappiness, and freedom from such desires the cause of greatest happiness. Therefore, completely cutting off her desire to enjoy so-called lovers, Pingala became very happy and went to sleep. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.